Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I can see everyone's just trickling in, so I'll give you a few minutes to join us. Welcome to AI for Marketing and Fundraising Teams. We're talking about 3 simple ways to boost focus, efficiency, and ideas. And as we're waiting for people to slowly funnel in today, I'd love to hear where you're calling in from. If you can see the chat button in your Zoom controls and want to share your organization in the chat, I'd just love to learn a little bit more about you. And today's webinar is going to be recorded. We will be sharing the webinar recording and the slides via email after today's presentation. And if you have questions or have comments to add, I can see some of you guys in the chat: Waukesha, Wisconsin, Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C. Feel free to add commentary throughout the chat throughout today's presentation. But if you have any more substantial questions, you can use the Q&A box and ask your questions, and we'll save some time at the end to be able to address everyone's questions about AI. Boston, Wisconsin, Cleveland Clinic, London, Ontario. Got everyone here. Chicago, Midwest is representing. Love to see that. All right, and a little bit more about AGP. We're an organization who loves helping mission-driven teams grow what really matters. We help nonprofits turn missions into movements and supporters into passionate champions. And we work in a wide variety of areas of expertise, spanning from advertising and media, brand and creative, data, SEO and AI optimization, web tech, and much more. We also serve partners across numerous sectors: hospitals, public media, health and human services. We work with a lot of food banks and welfare. We'd love to work with you guys too. Today's presenters are Ren John, he's our VP of AI and Strategy Solutions, and Ashleigh Lambert, our Vice President of Client Strategy. Ren, can you tell us a little bit more about your expertise and why you're here today?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Ren, the VP of AI Strategy and Solutions, which is a brand new job title for this new market and economy we're living in today. I am a software developer by trade. I've been in software development for over 25 years now. It seems like a long time, and working in the nonprofit sector for the last 15 years here at AGP. I've been really excited about AI for the past, 3, 4 years. It's been out and learning whatever I can. It keeps changing fast, and I'm just like everyone else trying to stay ahead of the curve and learn as much as I can. Ashley.
Lambert. I'm the VP of Client Strategy. I lead and solution for our clients. That's leading our expert strategists who are building solutions and direct response programs across all channels for our clients. And I have also been at the agency for 15 years. Interesting fact is that Ren and I started on the exact same day. So there you go. But we're longtime buddies. But yeah, my team is primarily on the front lines. You probably know and work with a lot of them. They are your lead strategists and your client experience team members. So I'm really excited to be here today because our team is also very engaged in this initiative.
Awesome. Before we get started, I want to send out a quick poll for everyone. You should see it pop up. Have you ever used AI? Like, how are you using it today? How often do you use it? Just want to gauge where people are with their AI journey today.
We've got answers coming in. We're at about 50%. I'll share the results here soon. Just give everyone a chance to answer. All right.
All right, we got use it on occasion, use it every day, use it once, never used it. All right. This is about the same breakdown that we've seen when we've asked this question in other areas. I also work with n10.org in their AI community space, and this is similar across the board for nonprofit organizations. So it seems like the trend is continuing here. with that, I think we can go to the agenda. Yeah.
All right, so this is just an overview of our agenda. First, we're going to set the stage. We're going to talk about why AI matters now, right? I mean, you're all here. You're clearly all touching it in some way, even if it's not on a daily basis. And then we'll talk about what we mean by AI, especially AGP's philosophy and approach to it. Some specific ways that teams can use AI, and then some of those pitfalls and things to avoid, because it's definitely not just something to use blindly. You need to know that there should be some guardrails, key takeaways, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. All right, so why we're talking about it now? Because it's everywhere. You can't really get away from it. It's buzz. It's everywhere, and that's okay, right? I mean, it's a new technology. It's very powerful. There's a lot of opportunity for us as practitioners, fundraisers, marketers, technologists. It's getting a lot of attention because there are also so many opportunities, right? So it feels messy. It's exciting, it's urgent, it's confusing. It's like all of those feelings wrapped up in one. So what we have come to understand just in working with our clients, working inside our agency, is that some of the ways teams are leaning into it is to save time, is to enhance their team or their own experience, to support their planning and their strategy, to boost their idea development. But there are a lot of tools, and Ren's going to get into some of this more specifically around the really popular options and some of those guardrails that we should have. But in case you're not already aware, there should be concerns too, just around privacy, information safety, accuracy, brand and voice, so that you're not going into it blindly when you're engaging with the tools, because as soon as you start using them, they can become very exciting. Go to the next slide. So we like to think about AI primarily as a support tool. It is not meant to completely trade off on human expertise and experience. And that is the value, right? I mean, everyone on this call is working for a very important mission. And the reason that that mission exists is because all of you are there and you're dedicated and you have the experience. The hands-on experience. So we want you all to be thinking about these tools as a way to enhance your work, not replace you as the human. So here are some categories and examples just of the themes we're going to talk about around synthesizing information, conducting research, supporting your planning, and then brainstorming and pressure testing, and really using AI as a sounding board for that support.
Yeah.
Turn it over to Ren.
Yeah. So what we mean by AI is generative AI. So stuff that where you prompt an AI with question or an ask, and it generates a response, it generates an idea, it generates a document, or it generates images for you. And that's the context we're talking about. We're not going to dive too deep into anything agentic or anything like that. Right here, we're showing just kind of a few of the tools that people use today. So Perplexity is a very popular one for deep research and fact-checking. It tries to reduce hallucinations, cite sources. It's very good for doing some deep research. ChatGPT is the OG, the first one to public market that everyone's heard of and knows of, but it's very good for, writing, brainstorming, every kind of support. Claude is I would say the next biggest one used for long form writing, thoughtful analysis. A lot of coding agents, coders and developers like myself prefer Claude for their coding capabilities as well. We have Gemini and Copilot. So these are really good working inside of, like, Gemini is the Google workspace system, so all the security surrounding that, their tools and their data, you get that with Gemini built in. Whereas if you're a Microsoft shop working the Microsoft ecosystem, Copilot is a very good tool, which is actually based using Claude and ChatGPT models in the back end to provide you with answers using Copilot. But Copilot also has and Gemini have the advantage of having security around their documents and stuff within their ecosystem. So what I recommend usually with people who are using any of these systems is you have a paid account. If you're in the ecosystem of Google Workspace or Microsoft, you can use those systems, or you can get enterprise accounts for Claude or ChatGPT, which have nonprofit discounts. Uh, Last one I put on here is Change Agent. Change Agent AI is one that was specifically built for nonprofit communities. So they're big, they're responsible, ethical. They try to reduce bias. They also run on their own infrastructure, so you're not running on these big data centers. So they're really geared towards nonprofit communities and the needs of nonprofits. So you have a lot of options. There's a lot of pros and cons for each, but these tools are available for everyone to use. So what we want to talk about is kind of like what AI is good at. Like we want it to use it to, generate starting points, synthesize data. So like when you're brainstorming with AI, you can start asking questions. You can ideate with it. You can have it challenge your responses, like, hey, or if you need to start off with, oh, I need a name for a campaign, give me a few ideas. It can do that. Synthesis of data, you can upload data, not proprietary data, unless you're paying for a subscription, because you don't want the model training on your data. But once you like upload 6 documents, it's like, hey, summarize all these documents? What are some key points? You can have it pull out examples from the documents, whereas you're not having to read all 6 of those documents or long form things. You can have it structure data as like, hey, I want it format this data in this particular way, or I want, an image, or I need wireframes. These are all things AI does very well. It's good at jumping a few steps ahead, so you don't have to start from scratch, which is great. Where you have to kind of watch out for AI is everyone's heard of AI hallucinations, which is where it makes answers up and it's maybe not accurate. It may not have all the context that it needs. It has a wide array of knowledge, so it uses the whole wide array versus focusing in on what your actual needs are. It may miss nuance between different conversations. Like we may have a nonprofit like American Lung Association or the truth.org, where they're both very focused on smoking cessation, but the nuance is American Lung has a lot more that it does around lung health and air quality and things like that, whereas truth.org is just focused on smoking cessation. So having that nuance, it may not get that without more context or more things. Human judgment or judgment in general, it's making its own ideas based on its own thinking. There's a lot of bias that comes into AI because it's trained on human data that is biased data. So trusting the judgment coming from AI is something that we wouldn't do. This is why we always want to have a human in the loop validating and verifying the responses. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go talk about guardrails and things like that.
Thanks, Ren. We just had a question come in from Angela. She was curious about Change Agent, as you described in the last slide. Does it work as well as some of the other models, or is it catching up more?
Yes.
It
So
does? Cool.
Change Agent is using open source models, and they have tested it against Claude, and they have very positive results. So I wouldn't promote them if I didn't trust them. So they like to use open source models, so they're not kind of feeding into the AI machine that's feeding biases and stuff like that. They also work with you to kind of remove biases from their LLMs because they're using open source models, and they change models as they test and new ones come out. And so they're trying to stay ahead of the game. So they have a good interface with the chat. They have collaboration tools that they're building out, and they do custom agent development as well. So it's a really good company because they're really do it with data privacy and responsibility ethical responsibilities in mind. So
That's really cool. Thank you so much for sharing.
So how we approach AI in our own work here is we think of AI as not artificial intelligence, more like augmented intelligence, where we're augmenting our human brain with artificial intelligence to help us, like I said, go further faster. We realize it's a tool. It's not here to replace human judgment. It's using us to help us surface more relevant information quickly. We try to make sure we ground our content. We also make sure we keep the human in the loop to make sure that like we're using AI as a tool, not as a replacement here. And with that, to scale reach without losing human intent. Basically, we were able to do more with AI. So we were able to, we call it force multiplier. You'll hear that in the AI space a lot because we can create more outputs faster, or more high quality outputs faster, but we still have a human who is accountable for all of the work that we produce. And this is what I tell everyone. It doesn't matter if AI is doing work, you're accountable for the work that comes out or whatever it produces. So it has to be reviewed. But it does allow us to generate more content or do more with less, which is a common problem we see with nonprofits who are under-resourced and understaffed that need to produce a lot of content and stuff. And if AI can get you, half of the way there, it saves some time with that.
Exactly right.
Oh no, that's totally okay. So responsible AI. So when we say we have specific tested use cases rather than chasing trends, we're not out here creating videos and images that are so cool that we are like creating, okay, if we create a campaign, we're going to need a social post for it that's 140 characters that we know is always going to be that. So let's have it create the social post based on the campaign we created. Let's create it for the different social networks we're doing so it can create 5 of those for us without us having to type it all out. It can email it to the right people to validate it, to our social person or email person or LinkedIn person, whoever it is. So these are repeatable use cases that we can use AI to help us get further faster, like I said. We make sure we're grounding it in real data, in visible sources, and like I said, we're still responsible for all the output. So we validate everything. Everything goes through human review. Now we can move on.
All right, so let's get into a couple of really practical ways that you can start moving forward if you're not already. Again, the poll says a lot of you are already dabbling and or using it quite frequently. So the first one, when we're really talking about efficiency and automation. So then I want to say this is the non-sexy version of it, right? Well, we'll get into some other things, but we want to talk about efficiency. One of the really wonderful ways that AI can help you is in summarizing information. So whether it's reports that you've put together or you might have presentations, this could be with data, it could be thematic. I mean, across your missions, there are many types of documents and deliverables that you're putting together, in addition to analysis that you or your teams are doing. So you can take these materials and you can find insights, high-level themes, gaps, understand the voice and tone of those materials better, and it will help surface that information. So coalescing the information, it creates a very easy way for you to do that. It can then also support your planning work. So one of the wonderful things after you've done all of this and it has helped you find these really high-level themes or gaps in your programmatic work, you can then use it to help you plan moving forward. So it could be that you have run certain campaigns year over year, or you have a big event that you run and you want to try to find alternative ways to approach that work. So maybe it's, I don't know, another way to start recruiting people, or a different thematic idea that you want to layer in. We were talking about pressure testing before. You can have an idea and put it in and sort of see what comes back, and then not take it verbatim, but use it as a way to start your discussion. So you can ask it to update the work. You can ask it to update results sections if you have something that you're trying to replicate. Like if you have, I don't know, briefs that you're giving to your senior leadership every quarter, there might be information and templates that you can leverage, and then you're replicating that, or you're having it replace the information. Another great way is automating administrative tasks. So especially if you're in Microsoft Cloud or using something else, you can have AI or Copilot take notes for you, create meeting agendas, draft up email responses for you, automatically put meetings on your calendar. So some of those things that take up your time and feel redundant, you can automate those within the system and just have it help you, or click a button and it'll draft some information for you. And then thinking about automating this for storytelling and thought leadership. Again, it's not meant to replace the work that your organization is doing or that your program or subject matter expert teams might be doing, but there could be, right? It's the idea of taking content you've created before and having it help you think about new content you could create or how you could reframe it. So examples here are just like using past articles, or as Ren was mentioning, social posts, like things that it can then help to replicate or prompt you into a recommendation. So how can it help you refine that language to make it even stronger?
Yeah, I would say one of the easiest things of that is meeting notes. And I love how meeting notes have evolved in AI over time, where now it gets your to-dos in there. It has open questions, it has decision points, and key summaries, and it puts all of that for you, and your whole team has access to that right off the bat. So that's like the first AI thing I teach people is like, turn on meeting notes or use a note taker and see how cool that is, and how much efficiencies you gain just by having AI take notes for you, and where you can focus in on the meeting.
That's right. And depending on the tools that you're using, that can then automatically create tasks for other team members that you might have. So it can push that work out and just make your team run smarter and more smoothly, depending on how you're leveraging the tool. All right. So when we're thinking about the second opportunity around the research, a lot of value that I see, and from our clients as well, is using it to gauge information around audiences, demographics, best practices, statistics, et cetera. Now, again, you have to really look at this information that comes back, make sure it's from credible sources, like what websites and articles or organizations did it pull that information from. But it's really such a smart and useful way to cast that net and then search results and click on every single article, right? It comes back with that, a bit of a synthesis and an overview for you that you can then in a way to really distill information so that you can move forward more quickly. A lot of times I'll use it like when I'm again sort of brainstorming. We'll get into that in the next one, but thinking about it where I already have a hunch about something, or I might know, right, because I'm working with a client and I already know a lot about their mission, but I just have additional questions and I'm not able to talk to a scientist directly, right? So I might be able to use this as a way to help do that research and gather more information for myself that I can then validate with the client. So I know that's really more of like how I'm using it, but I think specifically that's also how your teams can use it as well, where you're able to collect it and then have more thoughtful discussions around it. Oh, the last bullet, sorry, if you want to go back, I think it's really interesting. The last bullet there around the competitor, the research, sort of comparing, this is another area, right? If you want to be thinking, maybe there's a new area that your organization is thinking about pushing into from a solutions perspective, and you want to be doing some competitive research, right? I mean, if you think about doing SWOT analysis, how they're more traditionally done, this would really be a time-intensive project. But you as a team or an organization could do something like that using AI and again, be able to surface information quickly. So doing some sort of competitive or peer comparisons. is really an opportunity too. Okay, and then this is honestly like my funnest one. It's just the brainstorming and the idea development. So this is something that I really lean into a lot as a strategist. It can be AI can be a very strong creative partner and help you jumpstart the concepts. So whether it's you're using information that you're building off of previously, or you have a new idea. And again, you want to sort of pressure test, you want to push it out and just kind of see what comes back from the world. Are there other organizations out there that might be doing something I'm doing? In what months is the best month to hold my event based on whatever else is going on in our industry? Just using it as a way to get some of that feedback. Sometimes when you're doing work, you're not in the same room as other people. We might be working remotely, or you might just not have access to a huge team. So this is a really good way that you can try to get that feedback. And again, it's developing options, not answers. So you need to make sure that whatever comes back is actually right. And again, Ren's going to talk about this, but you can sort of play devil's advocate a little bit with the AI and ask it to validate itself, or talk about the most prominent place where it got the information in order to give you that idea. But it's a way to formulate more possibilities and future looking. So testing messaging directions, thinking about where your team should potentially invest money based on maybe the different marketing or the different, again, direct response activities you're doing, what a new audience profile might look like for you if you're trying to acquire new donors. So there's a lot of ways to be creative and just ask it questions.
So with AI, there's a general fear and anxiety around what it returns and gives back to you. And so developing guardrails and guide rails is something we have to do. So over reliance on output. So again, keep a human in the loop. AI is going to produce what AI produces. It has no empathy, human judgment. It doesn't have the things that we value as human beings that we build connection on, especially with nonprofits. So treat AI as a starting point, not the final answer. The final tweaks, everything should come from you. You should ask it for, like Ashley was saying, ask it for options. You can tell it to validate itself. You can tell it to choose which options, refine the options. You can have it ask you questions, like ask me questions and get my ideas out of me, and have it remember your cadence and stuff like that. But remember, at the end of the day, it's your output. So you need to review it, and you need to ensure that what it is outputting has been reviewed and is validated, fact-checked, and really states what you're trying to say. Like hallucination risks, like I said, AI is known to make stuff up when it doesn't know the answer. So verifying the facts and stats, telling AI to source where it got its information. So it provides links to any sources that it's using. Check those sources just to make sure it's not making up these sources and not linking out to dead links, which happens a lot. You can prompt AI to not make up information. You can prompt AI to validate its own responses before you validate. It's like telling someone to check their own work. You tell AI, check your work, double check your source links, make sure, and then you go in and do the second double check on that. But honestly, just telling AI, I don't want you to make up answers. I want you to cite your sources, and I need you to validate that and then revalidate it at the end. Is something that's important. That's how we help improve accuracy and reduce hallucinations. I do see a couple questions in the chat. So one, does AI ever have access to my data? Yes, you have to turn model training off when you're working with AI, which is why I suggest always use either an enterprise account or a paid account, your own paid. And then even if you pay for an account, you have to go into the settings and it says, train the model on my data. Say, no, turn model training off. I think you only get that with paid accounts. So make sure you're paying for an account, or you're enterprise is paying for account. Like I said, Claude and ChatGPT have nonprofit discounts that your organization can be using. And they also have training programs online, Claude or Anthropic does, that you can dive deeper into actual prompts. And I see a question. AI makes up answers if it doesn't know. Yes, AI always tries to generate a response rather than saying, I don't know. So you can tell me if you don't know something. Otherwise, it's going to generate an answer. Its directive is to always generate an answer. So that's where hallucinations, which is where it's making up something, and that's where you have to tell it to validate its responses, cite its sources, and stay on top of it. And then after it validates, you validate and you check, you click the links, because I've clicked links that have gone nowhere, and I'm like, where did this link come from? So it's because AI is instructions are to generate a response for every prompt. And if it doesn't have a response for the prompt, it's going to infer based on its knowledge that it has. And it's been trained on all the knowledge up to a certain point, and then the new model trains for the next bit of knowledge that's been generated in human history over the last year, and the new model gets trained again. But there's a limit to how much, and there's also, because it's trained on all of the internet, it could be pulling from sources that aren't validated. A lot of ChatGPT pulls from Reddit and from sources where it's just regular people making stuff up. So really have to look at the response it's generating and the intention behind the response. Like if you're looking for having it bring up facts, you're like, okay, that's one thing. Another thing to do is to ground it on your own data. So instead of saying, hey, look at the whole internet, say, here's the 6 files I want you to look at. And then it's just looking at those 6 files, and it keeps its context just on those 6 files. So it won't make up anything. You can just say, look at these files and don't look at anywhere else, and that's what's called grounding. So if you ground it on data, the hallucination risk greatly reduces. So that's one of the best ways to avoid it making up answers.
Another way,
Yeah, go ahead.
so I just wanted to interject just to mention that I think it's also important not to necessarily try to be as factual as possible and straightforward in whatever it is that you're trying to do, meaning you're not leading it. Because again, if with what Ren's trying to say is that it wants to do the best job for you it possibly can. So if that includes making up information, if you're putting leading questions or statements in, it's going to give you back and basically put you in an echo chamber to say, like, you're absolutely right. That's an amazing idea. And it will come back and say things like that. So just be really conscious of it as you're engaging. And honestly, if stuff comes back wrong, I will tell AI that it is wrong. And then it will be, and then it'll apologize to me, and I'll be like, that's not right, because I know it's not right. And it'll say, you're correct. I did not do that well. Here's a better option, and then it tries to do it again. So I think just know that you can interact with it and potentially get alternative options if you're being honest with it and sort of giving it that feedback.
Yeah. And I see a question. If you're working on a document with massive references, how do you go through every link to check the validity? What you want to check is the links that AI is producing. So if AI is saying, gives you a link to a document that has a lot of references, if it's going to a reputable source. So if it's linking to a scientific journal that has a lot of references, you don't have to check the references on a scientific journal because that has been peer reviewed. But if it's linked, if the generated response is linking to that scientific article, you want to check that link is actually going to an article that is of a reputable source and not going to a Reddit post where someone is just claiming they're an expert in something. So that's what I mean by checking sources. So yeah, fact checking AI is there, and the echo chamber. So one thing about the echo chamber, the AIs like to be, I guess, sycophantic in nature. They like to tell you, hey, great idea. Yeah, I like the way you're thinking. You kind of have to, you can tell it to challenge you. You can literally prompt it, challenge me and make sure that what I'm thinking is correct. Or as pretend to be one of my constituents and read this and provide some honest feedback versus telling me what I want to hear all the time. Or you're now not a constituent, you're my CDO at the agency, my development officer. I want you to read this and provide feedback. And it will try to emulate different roles to make sure you're not just getting an echo chamber of it just saying you're the best, because that's what it likes to do. It likes to pump you up. So telling it, hey, I need you to actually challenge me and be a good counterpoint. And like you can even say, what's the counterpoint to this? And then have it go back and forth in order, just, hey, ask me more questions. So it'll ask you more questions to get to a better answer. It is a good way to not feel like you're stuck in an echo chamber, but it takes a little bit of prodding with the AI. The last bullet here, voice and brand drifts. So the same thing I said, if the more context you can provide to an AI, the better it will do. So if you are generating a new email campaign, if you give it 6 of your old email campaigns, say, ask me what does the voice sound like in this, and then validate that that's the values I want to pull, that's the brand voice I'm going for. Or you can say, hey, you're missing this, or hey, that's wrong. And then help me start a new email campaign for the month of November, and it can go ahead and it'll do that. And like I said, when you ground it in your own data, it gets better at staying with your own voice. And like I said, even if it writes something that looks great, I think you need to go through it and make sure it's the same structures you're following. And it's really good at reading your emails, like, oh, you got a header, you got an image, you got these different pieces of your ask and whatever, and it will generate the same thing. Like I said, it jumpstarts you, but it shouldn't get you to the finish line. Anything to add on that with the voice and brand, Ashleigh?
I mean, I know of organizations that are using this at their entire brand level in ways that they're really trying to train a tool so that it speaks for them as an organization. Meaning, again, when they're putting everything in, it's not just templates or whatever, but it's really the content that comes back is in their organizational tone. And then training for different writers, for example. So if you might have key people within your organization that you're using as signers, or that they're constantly sort of out in the public, they are the face of the organization, you can be training them on voice in that way. So that when your social media manager then needs to be writing posts that come from them, for example, they can even more easily do that based on work that you've had before that they can train for that specific person. So again, it's around that key takeaway that we want to impress upon you. It's around efficiency, it's around automation, but it doesn't mean that someone's not looking at it, because at the end of the day, you're still responsible for the work that you're creating. Another way that I think is really helpful too is when we were talking about sort of generating structures, when you've got deliverables, sometimes you have to think about all the people within your organization that need to be using those deliverables. Reports is a key item. And you can easily take something you have and say, I need an executive summary for this, right? I have to float it up. I need someone else to read it. It's going to go to our board. It's whatever. And you can take the materials you have and create different flavors of them for the different teams or offices that need to look at stuff. And then you can, again, make sure it's in the voice and the branding, because it could be going to a level of executives that are not immediately in the work. And so it's still within your organizational branding.
Yeah, I see a question. When asking AI to synthesize my info, will AI have access to use for others that info? So if I think you're asking, can others use the same information that I'm feeding AI? Right now, AI chats are pretty much in your account and your memory and things, but there are ways to help share that brain trust around. And one way is in projects or custom GPTs or agents. And what that is you create a separate project and you upload data to that project, and you upload custom instructions to that project or that agent inside of Copilot or Claude or ChatGPT. And this usually has to be within an enterprise account, and then you can share that with the team. Now the team will get access to the documents and access to the custom instructions and custom GPT. They won't have access to your specific chats unless you share those specific chats, but the memories and stuff that are building within inside that project should be available for other team members to use. So that's a little bit more advanced technique when you're using these custom GPTs, but that's one way. But again, it's just the data and custom instructions that kind of get shared across the team, but not the your own chat, if that makes sense. All right, is there a next slide here? Yeah, when not to use AI. I again, because like I said, even with guardrails, even with the stuff around communication, because you are again responsible for the output. Anything that's high stakes, donor communications, you still want to own more of that than the AI does, like, because this is high stakes. Anything that a decision that impacts people or strategy, again, this is your human judgment, your experience values a lot more than what an AI is going to tell you. And a lot of you have been in this industry for a long time, so trust yourselves and that over AI. Like I said, unverified data stats. If someone's, like I said, the Reddit post, someone mentioned something like, okay, we need to investigate that. You're not having AI investigate that. You need to do that to validate any kind of stats or claims like that. Confidential, essential, sensitive information. If it's proprietary or if you don't want it public on the internet, sensitive stories, you need to anonymize it somehow. I wouldn't give that to an AI to use. Like I said, some of that without the data training turned on is good, but most AIs have this very vague language to make sure they're less at risk for anything leaking. So I never put any confidential PI information into an AI. It gets anonymized or cleared out of my spreadsheets before I put that data into an AI. Brand voice, critical content, like you need to come up with your brand voice. You're not having AI come up with it. So so when you're training it on your voice, it's not it training you what your voice is, you're training it. So that's really some content needs to come from you. And that brand voice is one of those things you guys everyone should identify for themselves. Anything requiring empathy, human judgment, the AI is just an AI. It's neither here nor there. It's left nor right. It's actually, it might have a lot of biases because it's trained on content from the internet. So when it requires real human empathy and judgment, please, that's not a place for AI. You can use AI to brainstorm and talk it through if you want to, but at the end of the day, when you need a human connection, be the human. All right, so here's some nice takeaways that we put together for this presentation. One, start with one repeatable use case, not AI everywhere. And what I mean by this, be intentional about where you use AI. It's not for everything. It's like, does it make sense? And I said social post is like a repeatable task that every campaign needs a social post that needs a LinkedIn post that needs an Instagram that needs a Twitter. They all have different things. Like Instagram needs an image, and this one needs 140 characters, and this one needs a hook line or something. If it's repeatable, it's the use case. Try it and see how much time it saves. And then once it's repeatable, you can save prompts and share them with your team, and then they can edit them from there and keep moving. That builds a shared learning environment. Like using AI for options and structures, like I said, ask AI to give you a bunch of options. You can pick the best one out of the 3 or 4 it gives you. You can refine it. You can think by the end of the day, you own the work that's produced by AI. Like I said, it's a support tool. It's augmented intelligence. It's not a replacement for your expertise, or your experience or your empathy or your judgment. So again, use AI as a tool, not as a replacement for work. And then guardrails, putting simple guardrails in place, like grounding your AI in actual data and content. So it's not looking at the vast array of its knowledge that it's being validating it, telling it to validate itself, protecting sensitive information, making sure keeping consistent brand voice. Just if you put these guardrails in place, AI is going to produce better results for you than if you're just going with whatever comes out of the box. If you put boundaries around the AI, it helps the AI to be more focused and give you a better output. And this is something we say everywhere.
Thank you so much, Ren and Ashley. I really appreciate your sharing your expertise and insights on this. I do want to follow up and say that we have an AI prompts guide that we'll be sharing along with the recording and the slides. You'll receive this via email today. But this is just 5 prompt use cases where we describe the prompt, give you tips and some things to watch out for so you can experiment on your own time. So look out for that in your inbox. And then I do see a few questions coming in. So we've got a few minutes to answer those. First question for you guys. Ren, I know you recently authored an article on this. Can you speak to the idea that using AI in any capacity can hurt our brand as nonprofits, especially since there are so many ethical, environmental, and privacy concerns with generative AI and data centers?
Yes, this is a question a lot of nonprofits have. How do I balance using AI ethically while it's also causing harm, could be causing harm to communities that I serve? And that is a decision everyone has to make on their own. But at the end of the day, whether or not you use AI is not going to change whether AI is being used in the world. The big levers that we have to combat what AI is doing with the environment and data privacy is at the regulatory level. Like we really need to push our state, local, and federal representatives to push these laws. And I really encourage that. I do see a lot of people caring about this a lot more now, about their data privacy, about data centers being opened up in their backyards. And they are showing up and showing out to protest or to vote or to push their local leaders to put regulations around this, because right now they're not there. But also being honest about how you use AI. Like, for example, we talked about how we used AI here at our corporation and at AGP, and if we're using it just to enhance the mission, we're using it to enhance our work and so we can deliver more. It's like we're trying to use it to better serve our communities, while also recognizing that we're going to limit our use and not, like I said, we're not generating videos because that uses way more processing power than does just a regular chat. And there's a nice calculator that was built by let me see if I can find it, and I can post a link to that. But it's really a decision you have to make organizationally. But knowing that if you don't use AI, you can still get the work done, but you might not be reaching everyone you can. But be intentional about where and when you use AI, so it's furthering your mission and not for just using AI. I see another question. Oh, yeah. When to disclose your honest that AI was used, or is it just not so widely used that everyone assumes that we're all? Well, I believe in the future AI will be part of everything, but maybe. And I had a talk with the Voice Actors Association, who are fighting in Congress to protect image and likeness of people, and voices of musicians, artists, and actors, so they aren't being reproduced. But their main thing is, like, when art and something is produced by AI, we should be disclosing that, hey, we used AI to help generate this, or AI was used to help edit this. And I think a simple, small one-line disclosure is fine for right now. I would disclose it. I disclose it when I do things. Um, but it's up to, I guess, your organization values and policy of how you want to do that. And I recommend disclosing it just about transparency, authenticity, and trust you build with your constituents. You want to let them know that here's where we use AI and here's where we don't. And we're actually probably going to be publishing our own disclosure letter about that. AI, can you use sensitive information but phrase it in a hypothetical format? So this is where you anonymize sensitive information. If like there are, and you also want to be very careful because there has been harm caused by AI that is just making up information. But if you're anonymizing the information, and you're looking at to synthesize data to figure out things, because we do have a lot of clients who work with a lot of sensitive topics. And one thing you also want to watch out for is bias in that, when you're asking sensitive questions, because there's a lot of bias in the world towards sensitive topics. So ask it to challenge itself in questions, but as long as you anonymize the data, I think and phrasing, like you said, a hypothetical format is okay. But there have been incidents with young people who are asking questions to AI and it's giving answers. So you have to be very judicial about how you do that. If we are training AI to make work better, aren't we essentially preparing it to replace us in the future? There is, yeah. So AI, like I said, is a tool and it is going to evolve how we work with things today, just like the internet has evolved, just like computers have evolved how we work, just like any advancement in technology. We have always evolved and increased our production, but the amount of jobs has stayed pretty much on an upward trajectory. I have to there's a study on this already, but there might be a shift with AI, and we are kind of waiting on to see what that is. I can't predict the future. All that I can say is jobs market will definitely evolve and change with AI, just like it has with any other technical advancement. And I don't know what the future holds, and I'm hoping we all have jobs in the future, or at least beach vacation houses. Not sure.
Well, hope here around. How do we raise our kids to have jobs?
Yeah,
That's one of the
that
key
is a
reasons why,
valid fear
yeah,
and anxiety we have. And
yeah.
I am optimistic about the future, but apocalyptic optimistic is like it could go either way. But if we push on, or like I
Mhm.
said, regulators at the federal, local level, like we have to shape society. It's up to us to ensure that AI doesn't take over society, that we are, again, human and in the loop in
Right.
society moving forward.
That's right. Like a lot of grassroots and other advocacy and support systems just to help make sure that those, those barriers, not barriers, I guess, those guardrails are in place.
Okay, I see some more questions in the chat. Like, does information actually vary between open AI and premium AI? Well, open AI is, I guess, the chat GPT, so, or open source AIs versus premium AIs. I would say there is some variation, but it's not as big as people think. If you, like I said, the open source LLMs are training as fast as the other ones. The big thing with the, I guess, the frontier premium AIs, they're building skills and agents on top of their thing. So not only will it give you an answer, it'll build you a wireframe in Figma, or it will build you a PowerPoint deck from Copilot, or ChatGPT is going to generate a really nice image because it has a better image generation thing. But as far as answer generation or generative AI at the very basic level, the answers, the accuracy is going to be similar between most models. I think there are efforts by like AI Commons to get better AI accuracy with more vetted sources and not using the whole internet to train models. But that is, like I said, in the works right now. Most of the open source AI versus premium AI models are trained on mostly the same data. Is bias any different in AI than in human? No, because AI was trained by human bias. It's dependent on the information it was trained on. And because most of the information it was trained on is from Western civilization, and we get a lot of the Western biases um, into AI. So that's, you kind of have to tell it, hey, uh, let's watch out for that kind of stuff.
Great.
Okay.
I think we've answered all the questions.
Those are some great questions. Thank you for those.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your time today. As I mentioned, you'll see the slides and the 5 AI prompts and the recording of this webinar in your inbox within 24 hours. But if you have any further questions, feel free to reply to that email and follow up, and we'd be happy to answer it for you guys. Thank you all so much for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.